So the setup, Jim Sciutto, CNN chief national security correspondent, sometimes fill in anchor, on with Jake Tapper on CNN yesterday.
Trump administration officials tell me, and these are officials with direct knowledge, that in a previously undisclosed secret mission in 2017, the U.S. successfully extracted from Russia one of its highest level sources, covert sources inside the Russian government. A person directly involved.
Okay. So the CIA extracted a high-level Kremlin source who is spying for the CIA. Now listen to this part.
In these discussions said that the removal of the Russian was driven in part by concerns that President Trump and his administration repeatedly mishandled classified intelligence and that could contribute to exposing the covert source as a spy. We should note the decision to carry out the extraction occurred soon after a May 2017 meeting in the Oval Office in which Trump discussed highly classified intelligence with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and then Russian Ambassador to the U.S. Sergei Kislyak.
Okay, we need to go back because you need to hear a key part of this. Listen again. Listen to this key portion.
Disclosed secret mission successfully extracted from Russia one of its highest level sources, covert sources.
Here we go.
Inside the Russian government. A person directly involved in these discussions said that the removal of the Russian was driven in part by concerns that President Trump and his administration repeatedly mishandled classified intelligence and that could contribute.
Okay, a person involved. This is CNN's Jim Sciutto reporting. Now, what you don't know about Jim Sciutto is that he was an Obama administration political appointee. He left ABC News to go work for the Obama administration, and I think this is actually deeply relevant here. There were a number of people who left the mainstream media to go work for the Obama Messiah. They loved the guy. They wanted to be a part of a part of his administration. They wanted to play some role. They really wanted to involve themselves in government as long as Barack Obama was president. You had Jay Carney. Jay Carney left Time magazine and went to work for the Obama administration first as Joe Biden's chief of staff, press secretary guy, and then went to work for Barack Obama as his press secretary. You had Shyla Murray. Shyla Murray was the person who worked for the Washington Post, and then she went and replaced Jay Carney as Joe Biden's comms director. You have Linda Douglas. Linda Douglas was at ABC News and left ABC News and went into the Obama administration to help pass Obamacare. Remember, Linda Douglas is the woman who encouraged people to turn in their neighbor if they were lying about Obamacare. She's now at The Atlantic, by the way. And you have Jim Sciutto. Jim Sciutto was with ABC News as their foreign affairs reporter and left to go work for the Obama administration. He wound up becoming the chief of staff and senior political advisor to Gary Locke, the ambassador to China. Locke had been a very progressive governor in Washington state. Left Washington state, went to China for the Obama administration after a stint with commerce, and Sciutto went with him as his advisor. He left the Obama administration and became an objective reporter. It's really amazing how the media is willing to give objective reportorial credentials to people like this who worked for a partisan administration and then went back into the media and has covered, by the way, foreign affairs. I mean, he went straight back into, now national security correspondent. This is a guy who was serving as an apologist at CNN for Susan Powers of the Obama administration, pretending to be objective, ignoring the fact, and CNN allowing him to ignore the fact he had worked in the Obama administration. And now he comes out with a report that alleges, key detail from a single source, that the CIA had to extract a source from Russia, one of its top spies, embedded within the Kremlin with direct access to Vladimir Putin, because they were worried that President Trump was revealing so much classified information that he was going to disrupt him. I encourage you to go to the Resurgent.com today, where I have a piece on this. And what I first would note is that this morning, this story had blown up big. And what had CNN done? CNN had downgraded the story to the bottom of the second column below the headline about Sarah Palin's divorce, and put up to its top story of the day for everyone to see, quote, Alabama is the latest front in Trump's war on truth. Government employees are standing up to the president's unbelievable claims about Hurricane Dorian. Only now, after I exposed this, has CNN actually rearranged the headlines to put this Sciutto story back up at the top. But there's a problem. If you go to the Resurgence.com, I've got the links, you can see it. According to Jim Sciutto, a person directly involved in the discussions said the removal of the Russian was driven in part by concerns that President Donald Trump and his administration repeatedly mishandled classified intelligence. There is just a problem. Contrast that with the New York Times follow-up reporting. The decision to extract the informant was driven in part because of concerns that Mr. Trump and his administration had mishandled delicate intelligence, CNN reported. But former intelligence officials said there was no public evidence Mr. Trump directly endangered the source, and other current American officials insisted that media scrutiny of the agency's sources alone was the impetus for the extraction. The government had indicated that the source existed long before Mr. Trump took office, first and formally accusing Russia of interference in October 2016, and then when intelligence officials declassified parts of their assessment about the interference campaign for public release in January 2017. News agencies, including NBC, began reporting around that time that Mr. Putin's involvement in the election sabotage and on the CIA's possible sources for the assessment. The following month, the Washington Post reported that the CIA's conclusions relied on, quote, sourcing deep inside the Russian government. And the New York Times later published articles disclosing details about the source. The news reporting in the spring and summer of 2017 convinced American officials that they had to update and revive their extraction plan, according to multiple people familiar with the matter, not just one source. The Washington Post has now subsequently come out with a story and confirms the New York Times reporting and dismisses the CIA reporting. The Washington Post, as well, is from multiple sources, not just a single source, and says it had a lot to do with media exposure causing the extraction. Contrast with CNN's claims that it was because of the president's mishandling of classified information. So, at a time of intense camaraderie in the American press corps over there dealing with the Trump administration, you have both the New York Times and the Washington Post coming out with stories directly contradicting an Obama administration official who now works for CNN. And let me explain to you what happened. Jim Sciutto was a foreign affairs correspondent with ABC. He goes into the Obama administration. He builds relationships within the Obama administration. He goes to work in Beijing with the president's ambassador, Barack Obama's ambassador. He comes back in 2013. He goes to CNN. He still has a lot of friends and sources. He builds those friends and sources. He has a sympathetic worldview to the Democrats. He does not like the president. And one of those sources tips him off and says, hey, Jim, I got a story for you. Jim, A, trusts that source, and B, is already sympathetically hostile to the Trump administration. So C, he's perfectly happy to assign malicious motives to the president because it comports with his worldview and his trusted source, who is probably a holdover from the Obama administration or a lifer embedded within the bureaucracy who leans left. And so he comes up with the salacious story, goes on CNN, harms the credibility of other CNN journalists in doing so, and rushes out the story. And now the New York Times and the Washington Post have more data. And it turns out, let's see, the NBC News began reporting about the information in 2017. The Washington Post reported the CIA's conclusions relied on, quote, sourcing deep inside the Russian government. The New York Times published sourcing detailing information about the specific source. So they had to extract him because of the media, not because of Donald Trump. But you run with that, CNN. And now what's happened? In less than 24 hours, major news networks around the nation and the world now, led by the Russians, no less. The Russians have now seized on the story. And guess what the Russians have done? The Russians have now published who they think the source is. They're exposing this person thanks to CNN's reporting. And it is directly the Russian story would not have come about but for Jim Sciutto's reckless reporting from CNN. And now the Russian story is being passed around American reporters and international reporters, exposing a key source of the CIA, putting his life on the line. Why? Not because Donald Trump did anything, but because CNN decided it really wanted to blame Donald Trump for it. based on one source within the administration. If something happens to this individual, it's not Donald Trump's fault. It actually is CNN's fault. This news story and this news cycle would not exist today but for CNN rushing out to blame Donald Trump, when multiple sources within the government and formerly of the government all say, no, actually, the media was reporting so much on the Russia story and exposing key points of information and sourcing that we decided we needed to extract the source, who, by the way, before Donald Trump was president, we already wanted to extract. So well done, CNN. Bravo. Bravo. I think very, very highly of CNN. I think very highly of that network. And I think this reporting was gross. And I think CNN understands the reporting was gross in that they had an exclusive and they buried it under continued coverage of Alabama and only changed it after I took a screenshot of it and it blew up on Twitter and went viral. That's really unfortunate. And I would like to think that CNN would look into this matter editorially, independently, without any bias, and look into it and see what they could and should do. But I don't think they will. I think CNN has doubled down on Trump bad, Orange Man bad, and everything related to Orange Man bad must be framed as it's his fault. And so I suspect internally the review will say it has nothing to do with reporter biases. It has nothing to do with left-leaning presuppositions about the president or his administration. And it has everything to do with Donald Trump. And that is really unfortunate. At a time we could use truth, when the president actually does say lies regularly about the media, and the media pushes back, the media now feels compelled to push out its own half-truths and lies and then blame the Trump administration and say it's all their fault. The president has a real genius of one particular superpower. He allows other people to expose themselves as just as bad as they claim the president is. And CNN is being exposed by that superpower today. And that's really unfortunate when we can actually use real truth and real news in the United States.